What's going on, everybody? Lil Chris here, and in today's video, I have another interview of mine that I would like to share. A few months ago, JFlowers had hired a communications manager, and they had reached out to me wanting to interview me and get to know me a little bit better as to how I got started with playing pool, how I got started with my YouTube channel, etc. And with their permission, I was able to record the interview so that way I can share it. But before we get to the interview, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and then ring that notification bell so that way you can get notified anytime I go live or publish a new video. So sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy getting to know me a little bit better through this interview.
Okay, let's get cooking. All right, let's start by telling me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little about you, where you from, and what do you do for a living?
Sure. So because of my father being in the military, I was born in Würzburg, Germany, but I've been pretty much raised here in Central Texas all my life, around the Georgetown, Austin, Round Rock, Killeen, Belton Temple, Waco, like all within those cities. You asked about what I do. I am a professional software developer, amateur pool player by hobby. And so I've been doing software development now since my career started in 2005. So that would be going on about 19 years, almost 20 years that I've been doing that.
Awesome. And tell me about, how you started playing pool. Like when did you get the interest of playing pool and, getting better and, excelling on it as a, like a really great hobby?
Sure. So I think it started in my junior year of high school where friends of mine and I would go to the pool hall on a weekly basis just for fun, nothing, being competitive within ourselves, because none of us were really any type of pool players. Like, we just knew general rules because we mainly just played 8-ball. But then one particular weekend when I went up there, none of my friends showed up. So I just tried playing by myself for a little bit and practicing. And in the pool hall that I started with, their room was divided to where they had 9-foot tables on one side of a wall and 8-foot tables on another side of a wall. And we always played on the 8-foot tables. Well, I happened to notice a gentleman was playing by himself on the 9-foot table, and he was playing 9-ball, which was a game I was not familiar with at the time. We're talking, this is, 20s, probably 27, 28 years ago. But I approached him and asked him if he doesn't mind me joining him for a game, and I had to ask him could you explain the rules of 9-ball? And they seemed simple enough to me at the time. Just shoot the balls in numerical order, and if you shoot the 9-ball in, you win. Or you shoot the 9-ball in on a legal hit, and you win. So it's okay. And this gentleman also had his own cue. I think he was shooting with a Mucci at the time, and I only had a house cue. I never owned a pool stick at this point. And so he started the match off with a break, makes a ball, and his very first shot, I got to watch the cue ball go forward, hit a ball, and then just start coming backwards. Basically a draw shot. And that just amazed me. I didn't know how that happened at the time or how it was even possible. It was one of those, my jaw drops, and I just look at him and go, how in the world did you do that? And he was nice enough to show me, and pretty much at that point, I was hooked. I was going to the pool hall 2 or 3 times a week whenever I had time, regardless if my friends were going or not. And slowly but surely started to learn how to play the game. But then I had to take a break when college came around. I tried to juggle still playing pool and going to college, but my grades couldn't keep up with the amount of time that I would want to spend in the pool hall. So I didn't really get serious until after I had graduated.
That is an awesome story, and I can totally relate to what you said about like going into college and trying to like juggle pool and pool in school, as I'd used to like say back then. And for me, like it was still difficult for me, though. I studied with an easier major. I'm a communication major, so I was able to like at least play in like 1 to 2 leagues a night, while also like while also trying to do like 5 to 6 classes a semester.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard thing to juggle. Like those two things are really hard to juggle, but at the same time, but once you get the hang of it, it's like pretty much like worth it, especially when like, oh, you don't really have much time on your hands. So you'll basically give your best, especially when when you get to the pool table, and like you see how it goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so tell me about how you started doing content in YouTube, and in your other social media
Sure.
platforms.
So I can't remember the exact date, with the exception of the very first video that I ever published on YouTube was, I do believe it was December 31st. It was either 2019 or 2020. It was, just the day before the day before a new year. And all that video was supposed to be was an introduction. I had the interest of wanting to create a YouTube channel, because I just wanted to see if I can take my skills and apply teachings of how people can learn the same skills that I had, and not also just skills, but interest as well, because I did spend probably about a year's worth of research looking at different YouTube channels and basically trying to learn like what's the best thing to do. The first thing I came up with was I noticed that every YouTube channel always has one niche attached to it. And I thought, well, maybe I want to try to be different. So I wanted to do 3 niches, and that was going to be playing pool, software development, and then fitness, because 4 or 5 years ago, I was a little bit more physically fit and was more physically active. But now that I've gotten older, I'm not as physically active as I was. So the channel actually started with just fitness stuff. Me and my best friend, we were doing fitness challenges at the gym and recording them. And I was trying to learn how to do video editing at the time, and just publishing some stuff. I think I also have just quite a few programming videos on my channel. But none of that really mattered until I published my very first pool lesson video, which was just covering the basics of how to hold the cue with your bridge hand, how to hold the cue with your grip hand, how to stroke, and all kinds of stuff. And that video alone got the most views out of all the previous ones that I did related to programming and fitness. And it wasn't until about my 3rd video that I posted, which was an old system that I might randomly use from time to time on one-rail banks. And when I published that video, I wasn't even at 100 subscribers yet. And I had this plan of, when I get 100 subscribers, I'm going to do a giveaway. And then I thought I might try to do powers of 10. So after 100, I would do 1,000, then I would do 10,000, and so on and so forth. But when I published that bank video, I was at a Texas State tournament, and my phone was just blowing up with emails saying, "You've gained a subscriber, you've gained a subscriber, you've gained a subscriber." And before I know it, I had jumped over 100. So I was already super excited, and I was thinking about, okay, what am I going to give away and everything else. But before that day ended where I was getting all those emails, I had jumped from less than 100 to about 900 out of nowhere. And I'm like, crap, I haven't even given away the 100 subscriber prize, and I'm already about to hit 1,000. What am I going to do? And it was pretty much at that point where I decided, well, maybe the one niche approach is probably the best thing to do. And since my audience appears to be more interested in my pool content, then I laid to rest the fitness content and the programming content, and been doing pool related videos ever since.
And speaking of the bankroll video, I was actually, I think those are like one of the videos that I stumbled upon when I was like trying to like improve my banks, and it was like so useful, that one rail bank technique. I still remember how to do that process, that measuring method, because of you. And because of that video, I was actually able to like bank my corner banks better, because that's the area that I struggled with as a player. Side pocket banks, for some reason I was able to like do effortlessly, but for some reason, my corner banks are, like subpar. So I started like looking at like those, one rail bank tutorials, and yours was like the most useful method I've ever done. And I teach it to my friends now as well. So that
That's
was like a
awesome.
really good, yeah, it's a really good video. And I appreciate that you posted that. It was so helpful.
No, I'm the one that's appreciative about that. Whenever I hear someone that might randomly approach me in the pool hall and ask me, "Are you little Chris?" and I tell them yes, and they just go on about how my videos on this subject or this subject has helped them so much. That's where I'm the most appreciative and honored when I get compliments like that. So I do appreciate it.
That's very nice of you. And speaking of little Chris, like where did you get your nickname, little Chris? Like that. Let's talk about like the history of that legendary moniker right there, little Chris.
Well, it's actually a simple history. Like I said, the pool hall that I grew up in, where I first gained my interest when I really started learning how to play, and I started playing in a bunch of pool tournaments that were there. And at the time, there were probably like 6 or 7 of us that were named Chris. Right. So the tournament director is like, what do you do? Chris and last initial, Chris and pronounced last name. And the tournament director was Korean. So sometimes some last names and his accent can trip up how you're supposed to be able to pronounce people's names. And so what I think it was one of my friends had just randomly dawned on me, because I was the smallest Chris of all of them, that I would be called Little Chris. And so within the local pool hall scene, that was at least my nickname. We didn't have to go Chris in the last name or Chris in the last. It was just, if you mentioned Chris, it's not me. If you mentioned Little Chris, it's me. So when I thought about making my channel, that was the first thing that always came to my mind, was to just use Little Chris.
That is funny. And like that, like a similar instance would be like, that reminded me of like when Efren used to be like a young hustler back then. Like there's also another guy named Efren who was like older than him, so that's why he got the nickname Bata, meaning kid. And the other guy getting the older moniker. So like so he's called the Efren, Kid Efren, and the other Efren is called the Old Efren. That's how he got his Filipino nickname. So so like you got, it's similar too. I mean, kid, little, so you got, you're in line there with with the greats. And speaking of the greats, like tell me about we all have players that we're pool players that were that inspired us. So tell me about your who's your favorite player, like of all time and current players, if you have any.
Well, that's really the best way to phrase it, because at the time when I was learning, none of the players that exist today were even mentioned. It was all about like Efren Reyes or Earl Strickland, Johnny Archer, Rodney Morris, all those legendary players. And at the time, I would probably have to say my favorite player was Corey Deuel at that particular time. But then as time has passed, and now we've got all these magnificent professional players around the world, both young and old. Like the age range is just so wide. If I had to put a number one on somebody, I would probably have to give it to Fedor Gorst. I think his mechanics are just superb. At the way he plays, and given his age, I think being only 24 years old, I can only imagine what kind of monster he's going to be as he gets older. But that's not to discredit like our own greats like Shane Van Boning, Sky Woodward. Like they're all great, and I have them all as people that I watch and I try to learn things from. But if I had to give a number one, it would probably have to be Fedor Gorst.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like Gorst himself. So what I realized with Gorst, what I learned with Gorst and other players around here, is that there are players that have good mechanics, and good. There are some players that have really good mechanics but have a lack of feel to the game. There are some players that have like a really good feel for the game, but like a lack of mechanics. And I think Gorse was like the very first player that like has like a really good like has like the best balance between those two things, and that's what makes him like really good. And that's, you know, and that's one thing I learned with these pros, because like most pros, right, they do have like good strokes, right, but you see a little bit of like tiny tiny like aspects that, you know, that makes their stroke like distinct.
Yep.
But with Gorse, like it's so like, you know, it's so sublime, like it's you know, you can tell that, oh, like he practices his stroke, he perfects it. It's quite mechanical, but at the same time you can see he has like this wide array of shots and in his repertoire, like that, you know, that you would say, oh, he's got a really nice feel of the game as well. So it's such a good balance.
Yeah, when you mention mechanical, like when you watch his pre-shot routine and stuff, I would almost describe it as robotic, in my opinion, because it's so consistent that you would think a robot is basically playing. His backstroke and forward strokes are always the same length, the same speed. His follow through looks almost the same. His elbow drop is like every little thing that he does is like almost identical from shot to shot, that you wouldn't be able to spot the differences. And that's what I think is so amazing about his game.
And awesome. And now let's talk about equipment. So how much does equipment matter to you as a player?
Well, I have to answer your question with a question. What do you mean by matter? What does it matter? Or like, what can you be more specific?
Oh, actually, that's a good, yeah, now that you mentioned it. What I meant was, you know, how does, you know, equipment, you know, let me hold that thought. So how much, you know, how does, you know, equipment, the quality of the equipment impact the player's game? Like how important it is to have, you know, a good quality equipment to, you know, for a pool player.
So let's go down this particular route, because even as an influencer, I get asked plenty of times, what cue do I recommend? What tip? What size diameter shaft? And, you know, blah blah blah. Carbon fiber versus wood. And I always give the same exact answer: is that it just depends. Now, because it's personal preference. Now, I do believe that most of the time you do find quality in price, meaning that the more expensive something is, the higher quality that it will be able to perform. But that's not to say as well that can a $1,000 cue outperform a $300 cue. It's really going to depend, but on the grand scheme of things, I probably would have to say no, because I think of one incident where Dennis Orcollo, who is sponsored by JFlowers, had a match with Shane Van Boning at one time, and I think Dennis had just recently become a sponsor and beat Shane Van Boning with a $400 Dante, I think at the time. All right, so yep. not a high dollar $1,000 to $3,000 cue, to where you hear the phrase, it's not the arrow, it's the Indian, or it's not the bow, it's the Indian. It's going to be the player. But still, that's not to say that if I took a $50 cue that's probably not made from good quality maple or anything else, like there's probably going to be a limit to how well a player can perform with that type of cue versus upgrading the quality of the products, of, you know, making sure that the maple that it's made out of is nice and straight, or doesn't bow after a certain amount of time, the quality of the tip and the way that the cue is balanced. All of those will probably just add minor little features that'll start allowing you to perform better and better and better until you reach the limitation of that cue. But then there's got to be a point, in my opinion, to where if a great cue can be valued at $500, just arbitrarily throwing out a number, a $2,000 cue is not going to make a difference at all. The only thing a $2,000 cue is going to do to the player is let every other player know how serious that person might be, or how rich that person might be, that they can afford a cue like that. because I've had plenty of different cues in my lifetime that range from $100 all the way up to $2,000-$3,000. And I've been able to perform equally well with them all as an amateur. I'm saying all this as an amateur because I'm not a professional by any means.
Yeah, and that's quite a good insight there. And not to mention, like, you know, so J Flowers, for example, J Flowers is like a good example of a cue company that makes super affordable cues that that doesn't like really like compromise the quality of how of the playability of the cue. Like I'd say, I think it's, in my opinion, it's like the only cue I've tried, like I tried that that doesn't really that you won't feel a difference in terms of hit, like compared to like more expensive cues out there. Like the quality is on par. It's within the standard of how pool cues should be, especially if you're playing like serious. So that's my take.
I have to give a little bit of a disagreement to
Okay.
what you said about what you said about the feel of a hit.
Okay.
Because before I started even using JFlower equipment, when I was using wooden shafts, I was very in tune with the hit, meaning that I can feel the vibrations through the cue into my grip hand whenever I struck the cue ball. But when I first transitioned to using carbon fiber cues, I started off with the Revo, and that felt completely different. I couldn't feel the vibration go through the shaft, through the butt of the cue into my hand anymore until I put plenty of reps into the cue. And then I started actually feeling it. And so without having that feeling, I didn't really know how hard I was hitting the ball or how soft I was hitting the ball. So sometimes I'd overcook the ball and miss my position, or I wouldn't have enough power in the ball and the ball wouldn't hardly move at all until I finally got well adjusted to what carbon fiber would feel like. And then to the point to where when I switched from Predator to JFlowers, it was at that point it didn't matter. I was well acclimated to what carbon fiber felt like, but there wasn't the performance was just as good as when I was using my Predator cues.
Awesome. And speaking of JFlowers.
So the feel of a hit is different. It is different. And when you add in maple plus the tip, wooden shafts to carbon fiber plus the tip, in my opinion, there is a difference in the way the cue will feel in a player's hand.
Now that that was a really good point, actually. Yeah. And that, I like that point. Yeah. That kind of opened my eyes. So, wood does feel much different than carbon, and the brands, you can really still tell the difference there. But like let's talk about more about JFlowers. Like let's talk about like why what made you switch to JFlowersCues.
Well, sure. So I think it was about 2 years ago when JFlowers had approached me and offered me a sponsorship deal. But this was just after me trying to negotiate a Predator sponsorship, because Predator was trying to offer me what they called an equipment sponsorship at the time, to where I would have like all new cues, a set of Predator Arcos 2 balls, just a lot of Predator gear. But the problem at the time was I had already owned a lot of Predator equipment. I had their Predator Black 4.5, I had their BK3, I had their BK Rush, I had their Air 2, I have all kinds of stuff. And I wasn't an aspiring player to the point to where I'm going to travel the world and try to win a major tournament or anything like that. So I knew that I was at least just going to be some sort of influencer for them. But the problem that I had was, since I already had all their stuff, they pretty much said that, well, when you need stuff, we will send to you at your request. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, crap, I just talked myself out of like probably $1,000 worth of product, free product at the time. But there was some back and forth that I had with Predator to where it's like, by the time we reached the climax of the deal, I didn't see where I was benefiting anything, because I'm using the stuff that I bought with my own money. And then I was going to get a couple of more items, and I had to exclusively use their stuff on my channel that I organically built. Because as you heard me mention earlier, that I was learning how to do video editing. Everything about my social media presence is all me, all self-learned. I don't have a crew. I don't pay anybody, nothing of the sorts. And I was trying to come up with some sort of deal to where I could have some sort of benefit from Predator, and they can also benefit from me from the exposure. But we couldn't come to an agreement. So when JFlowers approached me, practically with the same deal, I told them no as well. Because if I want to grab any of my old cues that I paid my hard-earned money with, I should be able to do that on my channel. JFlowers was at least more susceptible to my counter argument there, to which they said, yeah, we do agree, but could you make JFlowers a priority at least? And I at least agreed with that. And so our agreement first started with me doing product reviews. I wasn't sponsored by them at the time. I was still shooting with my Predator cues. And so they had sent me a bunch of JFlower cues that I did some product reviews on. And I gave them away to lucky subscribers, and pretty much have been did that with them for about a year or so. And they approached me again and said, how do you feel about using our stuff now? And my only counter argument was, as long as you still allow me to product review whatever I want, then I'd be happy to start using your cues. And they agreed. And so we pretty much have been doing that ever since, to where I haven't really done anything lately because I've been busy moving into a new home. You can see I still have a mess that's behind me. That's why I haven't really published any content. But I've been shooting with their cues now for going on a good year now. And the most positive thing that I can have when people usually say, well, how does JFlowers compare to the Revo? I have a live stream that I did about 10 months ago when I first hit 100,000 subscribers, and I did a comparison of the SMO shaft to the Revo. And personally, I do not like doing comparisons to things. I would rather just present facts of a product and let you decide as the consumer which one you would want. There's always going to be that caveat that since I'm a sponsored player, I'm supposed to talk them up. I'm supposed to say great and wonderful things about them, which is another thing why JFlowers loves working with me, is because I don't do that. All I do is just present facts. And so in my live stream that I'm talking about, what I was able to demonstrate was making a straight-in shot where the object ball is about 3 feet away from the pocket. Cue ball is about 2 feet away from the object ball, and my bridge hand was marked 1 foot away from the cue ball. So everything was always the same. And I had a 12.5 SMO shaft and a 12.4 Revo, where I would demonstrate deflection. So I would use 1 full tip of left spin and 1 full tip of right spin, try to use the same speed and stuff, and pretty much show that I can make a straight-in shot to where the deflection isn't big enough to cause me to miss a straight-in shot. And not only that, on some of my shots with both the Revo and the SMO shaft, you can still see the measles on the cue ball spinning as it heads towards the pocket, and sometimes the cue ball would scratch to show that there's hardly any deflection in the shaft. Now, I know that there is a video out there that shows that the SMO shaft has a 4 millimeter difference in deflection between the Revo, and I can't demonstrate something like that. So that's why I came up with the demonstration that I did. And so my advertisement for JFlowers is, well, if you look at these results, because I practically produced the same results with both shafts, one shaft, I think if I remember correctly, I hope I'm not misquoting, the Revo cost $4.99, I think, while the SMO only costs $3.99. Which one do you want to pick? And I don't think anybody's going to fault you if you choose the cheaper one and get the same performance.
Yep. Yeah. That's what I had in mind too. Like, if they basically like perform, like similar, or almost the same, sometimes it all like ends in, it all comes down to like the price, like which one is you think is, more bang for the buck, or which one's, more has more value for the money.
Yeah, and so to top off your question as to like why I continue to work with JFlowers is because they continue to work with me as well. They know and understand that if I want to own JFlower Cues, I can just buy them. If I want to own Predator Cues, I can just buy them. If I want to own Mosconi Cues that Niels Fine uses, I'm a 9 to 5 worker that has my own salary and hard-earned money and stuff, and I can just buy these things if I really want to. So I'm in a position to where I don't need these sponsorships, and it's fair to say that maybe they don't need me either. But I also do have a wide audience that I can appeal to, that I think any company would want to maybe at least have in their back pocket. So when it comes to working with a company, as long as the company is supporting me, that allows me to support my fans, then I'm happy to work with the company. And JFlowers has been able to do that.
Awesome. And can you talk a little bit more as well about like what do you like most about JFlowers, like from the equipment, from the cues, I mean, actually from the the equipment in general, and the company in general, if you have some things to say.
Well, I think it's simply put that I did a presentation, a video a while back that talks about when it comes to buying cues. And a lot of it is when it comes to the price of a cue, a lot of it is going to boil down to you being in my opinion, you being the only player in the pool hall that has that particular cue. Like, I think if you ask any player, the majority of the time you'll hear them say, this is my 5th cue, or this is my X number of cue, or whatever. And each cue that they happen to get happens to be more expensive than the previous one because they're always trying to stand out. And that's for people that can afford to do that. And there are plenty of people that just can't afford high dollar cues. And I think JFlowers at least was probably one of the first ones that I heard that started throwing out the affordable price, especially for carbon fiber shaft cues. I think that I'll at least say that, because as wooden cues, there were plenty of beginner type of companies that were out there to where you can get a cue for $50 to $200 or whatever. But when it came to getting a carbon fiber shaft, at the time when JFlowers and I started doing business, I didn't think there was a company out there that made carbon fiber shafts or carbon fiber cues as affordable. And I say cues because at the time, JFlowers didn't sell just carbon fiber shafts by themselves. You had to buy an entire cue, but you bought an entire cue at $300, whereas you had to buy a Revo or the Q-Tech Synergy, and those were all like $400 or $500 at the time. So you only get a shaft, you only get half of a cue at a more expensive price versus a full cue at $300. Now I think, heaven forbid we go through inflation, so the prices of the cues have gone up a little bit, but they're still very affordable in my opinion, where you can get a decent carbon fiber. You can get a decent cue with a carbon fiber shaft for less than $500. And 4 or 5 years ago, that was unheard of.
Yep, and that's it's still and I think we'll still trying to be like you said with inflation, we despite that happening right now, we still try to like make sure that our cues are still affordable for especially for the consumer as well, especially for ones that are wanted to play and wanted to start with a carbon fiber cue. And
I want to add this. I did forget this because the with the exception of I think the Crown and the SMO, when you buy a JFlower Cue, you do have a choice between their low deflection wooden shaft or their classic carbon fiber shaft. And choosing between the two doesn't alter the price. Whereas I think other companies, choosing between a wooden shaft and a carbon fiber shaft, there is a change in price when you do that. The only exception that JFlowers has is if you choose the Crown, I think there's like $100 increase, and if you choose the SMO, I think it's a $200 or $300 increase from the base price of the cue that you're choosing.
I'm on like, hold on just a second. I think I think we still don't have the wooden shafts again. I believe, I think I haven't been here long enough to like know, but I recognize, I think, you know, you had JFlowers had wooden shafts back then, right?
Yes.
So I think, yeah, so far we're trying to like get a new wooden a wooden shaft release, because so far we only have our carbon fiber lines still yet. I think we don't have the wooden shafts available until that new shaft like arrives.
Okay.
So
So that's a little different.
Yeah, so it's it's just a little different. That's why I thought, oh, so I guess we don't have I guess JFlower, when I got the job, I was like, okay, so I guess JFlowers doesn't have a wooden shaft yet, and you know, they even had it in the FAQ. It was like, okay, I guess we're making it the final, you know, around the final quarter of 2024. But now that you mentioned it, there, you know, some, and you know, I realized it too back when JFlowers was new. We did give a choice between a wooden and a carbon shaft.
Yep.
That's all right. Another eye opener there. So, okay. And one final question for you. What advice do you want to impart to aspiring pool players? Actually, aspiring content creators and influencers. What's a good advice that you would give to them?
Well, I'll start with content creators. Simply put, I think you just have to make sure that whatever information that you're going to attempt to present, that you do attempt to present it well. And well is subjective, but I have a background in teaching. When I got my master's degree in computer or information systems, I did have the privilege of teaching at the college that I graduated from for a couple of semesters. And even while I was going to college, I was a tutor. I was a lab assistant, so I was always helping people with their homework, and then of course eventually teaching actual programming classes. And so with that teaching background, when it came to presenting any pool lesson that I had made, I tried to make sure that I taught it in such a way to where hopefully anybody should be able to understand, and hopefully anybody should be able to replicate what they see in the video. And that has always been the number one compliment that I always get from fans and followers that see me in person, and saying just the way I present the information is just so well done. So for a content creator, that is definitely something that you have to take into consideration if you want people to be able to follow the content that you're going to create. And then as a content creator, you got to have some thick skin. Because in this day and age, everybody loves to hide behind a keyboard. And so they will definitely say some stuff to you that they probably won't say to your face. And you just got to remember that you'll probably never see these people face to face. So there's probably no real reason to get upset if somebody happens to insult any of your content for whatever reason, because it's bound to happen. And you're gonna accumulate some haters. It's just bound to happen. And I remember when I started receiving some hate comments, I remember hearing from some people that if you don't have haters, you're not even doing it right. And so I pretty much started embracing it at that point. For aspiring pool players, coming from an amateur, the best thing I can say is what my coach always tells me, and that is to enjoy the ride. There's not going to be a time where you're just going to come out and just be this great and wonderful professional pool player. You can ask any of the greats how their up and down, how their roller coaster ride was. And everybody's ride's going to be different. You're going to have those nice rides where you're just going up and up and up and up and up and hardly ever come down. And you're going to have that ride where you all of a sudden hit a peak and then you just fall way below even where you started. And then all of a sudden you're just going to climb up and up and up again. It's always just going to be this roller coaster ride. And if you're a serious pool player that's trying to get better, that ride will never end. Because if it does end, that means you're the number one pool player in the world, and no one can dethrone you. Which I think I don't think that'll ever happen. Like you can pick all the great players that there are today, and even the number one ranked Fargo rated player in the world, which I believe is Joshua Filler, he still gets beat from time to time. Right, so as an amateur, just be prepared for that. You're going to have matches that you're supposed to win and you're going to lose. And you're going to have matches where you're supposed to lose and you're going to win. It's just do what you can at the time. And it looks like someone's at my house, but we can ignore that. But all you can do that I always like to say, play your best. And if you lose, that's okay. Because that means you got beat, or it most likely means you got beat by a better player. And hopefully what that means is that it opens your eyes to what you need to work on to catch that player that just beats you at your best. So that way you don't focus on the wins and the losses. You focus on how did you win or how did you lose and how can you do it better. So I always like to say that if you have a particular player that you always match up against, and I'm just going to use race to fives as examples. If you're losing always 5-0, then you wouldn't worry about trying to win. That's obviously the long-term goal. But getting there should mean that you would lose 5-2, maybe 5-3. And then all of a sudden you lose 5-4. And then all of a sudden you're winning 5-4. And it just starts to gradually shift to where now you're winning 5-3, 5-2, 5-1. And then sometimes you're getting the 5-0, 5-1 victories to show your progress that you have now beaten this player that used to consistently beat you. But the journey doesn't end there, because now there's going to be the next player that will do the same exact thing, and you have to go through the same exact process with the previous player. And it's just something that's never going to end, which is why I would say don't focus on the winning and losses of the results. Focus on the details, which you always hear them say, focus on the process, never focus on the results. And I can tell you, after 27 years of playing, that's a lot easier said than done, because there's still plenty of times to where I would lose and I'm just so upset when I lose, and I'd say to myself, there's no way I should have lost. I should have been able to pull this out. Then once my nerves calm down, it's go, okay, why did I lose besides missing? That's always the number one answer. What are some real fine details as to why I lost? And I start trying to find those details, and then I take them to the table and start working on them. And so that hopefully next time I either come out with a victory or I don't lose as bad. That's the best advice I can give to an aspiring pool player.
And I'm gonna use that advice too with my pool journey as well. And thank you for that. That's very much needed advice for me personally. Well, anyways, thank you so much again for joining me, and thank you for this. Thank you for agreeing to be in this Zoom interview. And yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much.
No problem. It was my pleasure.